Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we're going to be discussing the hot topic that everyone is talking about, and that is the trade rumors involving Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson. So let's get started. Now, for those who don't know or don't follow my podcast, I like to break it down into three parameters. The first one is who are the players and coaches involved. The second one is why the move was made or could be made. And the third but least parameter is the instant gratification versus long-term gains. All right, so those are the three parameters that we're going to be discussing. So I break it down layer by layer to get to the core of exactly what I'm trying to push or what I'm trying to get my point across in terms of where we are in discussing whatever topic we are discussing about. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson reportedly wants out of Houston. He is disgruntled in Houston. It's been reported, like I said, that he was at a 2 and then heightened up to a 10 after the DeAndre Hopkins deal and that trade. For those who don't know, DeAndre Hopkins was traded to the Arizona Cardinals in exchange for David Johnson, which I will go back and talk about that later in this podcast and how it relates to Deshaun Watson moving forward. Stay tuned for that. It's coming up in about, 5 minutes. But getting back to Deshaun Watson, very unhappy. He does have a no-trade clause in his contract once out of Houston, and in order for the Houston Texans to even consider a trade, he would have to first give them the okay to waive that trade clause so he can go and play for another team. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Deshaun Watson, the player. He was a 2017 first-round pick, number 12 overall, three-time Pro Bowl player coming off a career year in which he had 4,823 passing yards, which ranked first in the NFL. He was third, I believe, in completion percentage at 70%, just above 70%. And then he also was tied for seventh with 33 touchdown passes. When you take that all into consideration and then look at the numbers he's putting out and the efficiency rating that he's at, you're looking at the second highest quarterback rating in the NFL at 112. I believe it's 112. Let me look back. All these numbers. 112.4, so he's at 112.4 behind only Aaron Rodgers, who likely will be this year's MVP. All right, so with no doubt, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Majority of NFL fans would love to have Watson as their franchise quarterback, but looking at it from a management perspective, we have to look at it from that perspective because, of course, everybody wants Deshaun Watson, but there's a lot of parameters that take place into factoring in whether he does make sense for the organization or doesn't make sense for a certain organization. Okay, so salary cap plays a role. The locker room dynamic also holds weight. So you want to look at the locker room, if it's a veteran locker room, a good mesh between young and older players, and see how that would mesh within that locker room dynamic. You also have to look at the risk reward of getting this high profile player because it can be volatile. It's a volatile, high risk, high reward. These are the moves that get GMs admired or fired. These are the power play moves that gets GMs admired or fired. You're either going to be looking like a hero at the end of the day, or you're going to be looking like the scapegoat and you're going to be gone, whatever city that you're managing, whatever franchise you're managing. So it's a bold play, it's a power play move, but one that GMs get paid the big bucks to do and to make, and so thank God I'm not in that position. All right, so with that being said, Watson is a top 5 quarterback in my opinion. What teams are realistically in the market? I think that's what we got to start and look for, because it doesn't matter which team Deshaun Watson wants to go to if the certain parameters don't fit that team's needs. What I mean by that is which GMs are more inclined to pull the trigger, right? You got to look at that parameter. Then you got to look at the numbers, right? From a financial standpoint, what teams have good salary cap health? And then which current roster assets would the Houston Texans at a position need be willing to trade for those assets aside from draft capital? Everyone's talking about draft capital, but I'm literally telling you, new Texas GM Nick Caserio would want at least an all-pro player in return because there's no guarantee that these draft picks are going to pan out. And that would look bad at Nick Caserio as his first big play as the GM to get rid of a franchise quarterback and then have these first-round busts in the end. It's going to look bad on him in the long run. I think the better play is to get those draft picks that you can, but also leverage those draft picks with an all-pro player who's proven his ability to play at the top of his game. Because if you're wiping your hands clean of a top 5 franchise quarterback, you at least want to get something in return and something guaranteed in return. Draft picks are no guarantee. Okay? And then you want to look at the positional needs I just spoke about. And then When you put that all in together, you look at the salary cap health, the current roster tradable assets, and then you look at the positional needs that the Houston Texans are going to need, which teams are a good fit. There's obviously a number of teams that are a good fit, but I'm going to talk about one. I already talked about the San Francisco 49ers. I included that in the description in this podcast. So if you want to watch that podcast, or if you missed that podcast, go ahead and scroll. And in the description, I put a podcast on Deshaun Watson. Go ahead and click on that, and then you can kind of see my take there. This podcast is in pertaining to an AFC team. So that's the NFC team. Now I'm going to the AFC team. The AFC team, and who I believe would be a front runner, is the Miami Dolphins. And the Miami Dolphins have leverage for a number of reasons. One, let's talk about the cap. Miami has cap space. I believe they have $32 million in cap space at the moment. And with Deshaun Watson signing a 4-year, $177 million extension, he has $111 million guaranteed tied up into that contract. When you look at that, what franchise can take on that contract? The Miami Dolphins can certainly do that. Now, again, Deshaun Watson being traded, he would have to, again, waive his no trade clause, but it makes sense because the Miami Dolphins have multiple first round picks, they have tradable assets, and they have the salary cap health to go ahead and make it fit for Deshaun Watson in their salary cap, in their salary cap basically. Same thing with the Houston Texans, right? So you got to look at it from both sides. And let's look at Houston, all right? So Deshaun Watson has a $15.9 million cap number for 2021. However, the dead money associated to that contract for the upcoming year is, I believe it sits at $21.6 million. And if you take the difference from 15.9 from 21.6, the Houston Texans would be absorbing a cap hit of $5.6 million. However, the $5.6 million cap hit for him to go play for another team would then be paid for a fraction of the price of his salary, because Houston Texans would obviously have to pay for a fraction of that salary, which is $5.6 million of his 15.9, and the remaining balance of that 2021 cap number would be around 10.4 million that the Miami Dolphins would take on. So it makes sense for any team looking for a top 5 quarterback, because Deshaun Watson definitely will be playing at a $10.4 million for that 2021 year, which is not bad for a top 5 quarterback, not bad for a backup quarterback even, for that matter. So when you take that into account, the Miami Dolphins are a good fit. Obviously, they're a team on the rise. They went 10-6. They have a really good defense. They developed the front seven and the secondary with Xavier Howard, guys like Byron Jones. They also have guys at Emmanuel Ogbah, drafted nose tackle and defensive end Raekwon Davis before switching to nose tackle with Devon Gacho being out with, I believe it was a torn biceps injury, and he's been playing at an all-rookie, all-pro level. So Raekwon Davis is a stout in the middle of the run defense of that 3-4 defense. They also brought in Kyle Van Noy from the New England Patriots, players like that. And the list goes on and on and on. And they have a lot of players, a good, strong foundation of youth. And that's just on the defensive side of the ball. You want to roll over to the offensive side of the ball. Of course, they have Tua Tagovailoa. But they also have guys like Mike Gesicki, a tight end who's very underrated, but in my opinion, is a top 10 tight end in this league. And then you look at guys like Devontae Parker, right? So the assets are there. The key pieces are there for the Miami Dolphins to go ahead and make a play. And I think it would be a match made in heaven if Deshaun Watson was to waive his no-trade clause to go with a team that's an up-and-coming team and could be Super Bowl contenders if Deshaun Watson was on that squad. There's some whispers with behind closed doors that some players don't believe that Tua Tagovailoa is the guy. And I think that was reported. I remember seeing that somewhere, but I don't know who reported it. But it was like 2 to 3 players supposedly anonymously said that they're not sure if Tua Tagovailoa is the guy. And who knows? Who knows if Tua is the guy or not? But at the end of the day, if you were to ask me who I wanted, even though I'm a Roll Tide fan, I would rather have Deshaun Watson over Tua any day of the week. I hate to say it, but it's true. I keep it 100, and that's how I feel. I think a lot of people would feel the same way. All right, so what are you getting with Deshaun Watson, right? So Houston absorbs a cap hit, like I said, of $21.6 million because that's the dead money, but a cap hit the balance from that cap hit of 21.6 from the 15.9 is $5.6 million cap hit that they would take on for the 2021 season to watch Deshaun Watson play for another team, whether it's the Miami Dolphins, whether it's the San Francisco 49ers, whether it's the Carolina Panthers, or someone else. All right. So it's a win for Miami, no matter which way you slice that bread. All right. Now it begs the question: what's the asking price? What is it going to take for the Miami Dolphins to acquire such a good talent? Well, if you remember, they made a trade for Laremy Tunsil early on, and Laremy Tunsil was the reason why the Miami Dolphins hold the number 3 overall pick this year. It was part of the Kenny Stills Laremy Tunsil trade that brought over that number 3 overall pick. So when you take that into account, and then you have Tua Tagovailoa, and then you add in, let's say, a few other players like the number 3 overall pick, ship that back to Houston with the number 18th overall pick. Now everything's coming into fruition and makes sense, because one thing that the Houston Texans need is draft capital. They need draft capital to move forward. They have a lot of holes, and as a GM, the more arrows you have, the more darts you have at the board, the better off you are, all right? Especially as a new GM coming in, you want to build the team through the draft and supplement the draft with complementary role players and veteran players, and find those all-pro players through free agency that you think are worth that big money contract, okay? So with that being said, at number 3, look for that player to be Devonta Smith. That's right. Houston Texans would strike a deal with the Miami Dolphins. The Houston Texans would get Tua Tagovailoa, the number 3 overall pick overall, which is their initial first round pick, and then the number 18th overall pick as well. So when you do the math, that's a 3-for-1 trade. They get Tua Tagovailoa, they get their quarterback of the future. They also can team him up with Devonta Smith at number 3 overall. And then what you can do once they draft Devonta Smith is wipe your hands clean of Brandon Cooks, because Brandon Cooks, I believe, is owed a ton of money, but I believe there's no dead money tied to his contract. Let me just go ahead and look that up. $12 million in cap savings for releasing or trading Brandon Cooks. So if you can get rid of Brandon Cooks, you save $12 million there. You sign Devonta and draft Devonta Smith, you're safe there. And then at number 18, you stay on the Alabama side and you draft Najee Harris. Najee Harris is a player that I believe would be and look well in Miami Dolphins running game. They obviously have a need at running back, and I believe Najee Harris and Devonta Smith, both those players would be sound players for the Houston Texans moving forward. Cornerstone type pieces. You now have a wide receiver 1, and you now have a running back 1, and they also have a quarterback. So the pieces are in place for GM Nick Caserio, because when you look at it as a whole right now, they don't have a running back. They have David Johnson. So speaking of David Johnson, which I told you I'd get into, once they draft Najee Harris, get rid of David Johnson. David Johnson's owned $6.7 million in cap savings. He's a cap casualty. Sorry, he's not owed that much money. That's how much money they'd be saving if they wipe their hands clean of David Johnson. So $6.7 million is a cap savings from wiping your hands clean of David Johnson. You then roll in Najee Harris on a rookie deal, and you also roll in Devonta Smith on a rookie deal and wipe your hands clean over there on the outside with Brandon Cooks. You're saving the team in excess of $18.7 million in cap savings. Makes total sense to me, and if I'm GM Nick Caserio, I'm trying to wipe my hands clean of all these stupid deals that were made earlier by Bill O'Brien, trading away your most prized assets, guys like Laremy Tunsil, getting guys like Laremy Tunsil, but then also trading away players like DeAndre Hopkins. Like, that's just the stupidest idea ever. Again, I kind of called it how I saw it back when the trade was made. You can go back and scroll through my podcast playlist in the description below. You can check my podcast in real time and then compare it to today and see if I was right or if I was wrong. Odds are I'm right, but that's why I post them. All right, so that's what I would do. Miami and Houston both have similar needs, so whoever picks at number 3 and number 18, if this trade is not even made, look for the Miami Dolphins to still take Devonta Smith at number 3 and look for them to roll with Najee Harris at number 18. And if the Houston Texans get those picks, they're going to roll with those guys. So roll tide roll, those are the picks, and that's my analysis on the Deshaun Watson 3-for-1 deal. All right, well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to say. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as I keep all things Beast. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.